taking you guys for a ride down a road, Watauga County. I've heard it called Black Snake Road. That's the nickname anyways, but yeah, just the first significant snow post Hurricane Helene. Really the first significant snow of 2024. This past winter was not very productive in terms of snow, or this past year I should say, and last winter, and the year before, and the year before. Just an effect of the current climate trends. Yeah, hard to believe. I took snowboarding class in southern Appalachian mountains in 2012, fall semester, my first semester in school. They do not offer snowboarding class any longer in the fall semester, because there's no snow in the fall semester. It's not going to snow until the week before the semester ends, or the week that the semester ends. It's not going to snow till December. You cannot open the ski mountains. I used to live in a neighborhood that was former ski slope. It had closed down. Some say that it closed down because the other bigger ski slopes in the area just outcompeted it. I've also heard that the town it's in is referred to as No Snow Fosco. Fosco is the name of the town. No Snow Fosco, people call it, because climate trends. You just don't get as much snow anymore there. It's in a ripple in between the Blue Ridge and the rest of the Appalachian Mountains. So, anyways, just taking a cruise up here. Nice stretch of forest in this area, but there is a gated community just kind of swallowing up land all around here, developing the mountaintops. I actually used to mow for this gated community, and yeah, they've been doing a lot of damage along this road, things that probably contributed to the flooding during the hurricane. So we're coming around here, and this is really the crest of the one ridge, and we're at 3,500 feet, about 35, my thing is reading 3535 at the 3539 at the peak, and now we'll be going down. We started out right around 3,000, so about 600 foot climb to get over this ridge. And yeah, excellent views of Grandfather Mountain. When I used to mow up here, I'd always stop to take a picture. A couple nice views along this road too. And you can see now we're getting into an area with a little more snow on the road. It's funny, yesterday none of the snow was on the trees, but today we got that, and it's pretty picturesque. Something that people don't probably think about though is when you have the snow sitting on the ground and sitting on the tree branches, it's actually reflecting a lot of sunlight instead of absorbing it, keeping it cooler for longer. And something else I've thought about recently is how snow could potentially insulate the ground. So if you had your bare earth, and then a thick layer of leaves that are kind of wet on top of that, and then a thick layer of snow on top of that, that kind of caps off the moisture and holds it in, and that heat in the ground temperature just kind of retains throughout the winter. That ground heat, it keeps pretty temperate, mild conditions underground, and when you have a nice snow or ice cap on top of that, it's going to hold in the moisture, hold in that water that holds a lot of that heat energy. Water, we know, has a really high specific heat index, I believe it's called, specific heat, can hold a lot of energy. So anyways, this is probably the sketchiest part of my commute, at least on this old road here. They call it Black Snake Road because it's got so many curves. And I have seen, unfortunately, 1 or 2 roadkill black snakes, black rat snakes specifically, on this cruise. They're not super common in this area, but they are around. And, you know, always good to protect our snakes. They do a lot for our ecosystems. Here we come across some sort of old field kind of habitat. You can see on the left here. See a lot of deer around here, some turkeys, you know, all the things the hunters like. But, you know, it's important to keep in mind that in natural Appalachia, without invasive species like this bamboo here, without deforestation and burning to clear land for pasture, the historical that's the historical condition of basically everywhere east of the Rockies. You know, you wouldn't be able to see the sky. We lived in a temperate rainforest. Completely different environment, completely different habitat. I moved from a cove forest in the shade of the trees, about 75-year-old trees. Not giants, but they're getting old. You know, I've seen 475-year-old tulip poplars, and that was the dominant species in this neighborhood I used to live in that had 75-year-old tulip poplars. But those trees provided a lot for the environment. And on top of that, a lot of them were cut 75 years ago, but their stumps were 200 years old or 150 years old, 100 plus. So that was, you know, part of why the wildlife were so abundant in that neighborhood. No grass, just trees, wildflowers, berries. We had fox pups across the street. It's a pretty special place. But anyways, coming up on an area with a couple switchbacks. Always a little scared, a little nervous driving. Here the brakes kind of skidding a little bit there, but Subaru's got control. This area got washed out. I don't know if it showed up under the snow very well in the video, but hurricane washed this area out on the right here. A lot of erosion from that creek. And again, this is a pasture that used to be a forest. It used to be dense forest with 100+ foot tall trees, you know, holding together the ground with 1,000 miles of root network. And they cut it all down for a pasture that doesn't even exist anymore, but for some reason the landowners maintain. You can see this creek on the right here, heavily eroded next to this church. And on the left here, this is a town. It's not really a town, but if you look on an old map, you'll see it. It's called Googoo, G-O-O-G-O-O, Googoo, North Carolina. And if you take a left over here, it'll bring you to an area where that gated community I used to work at is currently. They already cut down all the trees. They burned them all up. I'll show you where they burned them. It's coming up here. They've been bulldozing huge amounts, truckloads of dirt down this road. And I've contacted the Watauga River officials responsible for ecological monitoring along the Watauga River, which this creek drains into. This is Clark's Creek. And you know, because this is a ton of dirt, ton of erosion going into a trout stream from the construction of this gated community. I've been told they're building a pickleball court. Really necessary, necessary development that has to happen, right? A pickleball court. So, and they had plenty of space, you know, in the places where I mowed to develop it. But anyways, they're getting this pickleball court going. They've been truckloading huge amounts of dirt. It's about a football field of dirt, but I'd say 30 to 35 feet high. And again, this trout stream on the left here is where, you know, a lot of people come to try to get some mountain trout. Not that they're native species and should belong in our rivers, but at least it's a natural activity. And you can see a big pile of trees on the edge of this stream here. After the storm, all the trees stayed intact. That you know, there were just small saplings and riparian buffer trees, you know, no more than 20-25 feet high. And they cut them all down after the storm, I guess, to expand their horse pasture, which got flooded. Of course, you know, this is not a natural, you know, a lot of people picture this, picturesque farm in the mountains and the rolling hills. Like, no, you shouldn't even be able to see the sky, because we should have trees 200 feet above us, thick with branches and needles if they're pine or evergreen, you know. So yeah, a bunch of wetlands filled in here. You can see there's this tall grass that we just passed on the left. It used to be a bunch of pools where salamanders and frogs would breed, and all these ponds would drain the water underground so it wasn't flooding on the surface. And the farmers, of course, filled them all in to, you know, have more space to farm and more arable land. But hey, we live in America, the most obese country in the world. We throw away 40% of our food. I don't think we need as many farms as we have. And anyways, here we're coming into where they're dumping all this dirt. So again, you know, 35 plus feet tall. It keeps getting taller. They've been burning all the trees that they cut down while burying them in more dirt. And I knew biologists who had agreements with the farmer whose land this is to put to monitor bluebirds, and it was a long-term study, which are really rare in biology. Very few studies go for, you know, 15 plus years, and that's how long the study is going for. And they buried their bird boxes where these birds came to year after year. Maybe the birds that hatched in those boxes were coming to lay their own eggs for generations now. And the farmers made an agreement with the gated community and got them buried completely underground. Now, you might feel like I'm bashing on farmers a little bit, and that's because, you know, there's this big wetland to our left over here that's all completely deforested, this whole valley, not to mention the hillsides. The wetlands are filled in, the entire habitat's degraded. There's just one strip of trees on each side of the creek. About 40 years old trees, not really providing too much because there's only grass around them, no leaf litter, no rocky terrain or logs, things that a cow might twist their ankle, but salamanders need to live under, and crayfish and birds. So, yeah, you know, real disservice to the land that most farmers provide. And in Appalachia, most farmers are millionaires who inherited their land and just simply do not actually feed anyone. So I've lived here for most of my adult life, basically all of my adult life. I've lived here, and you know, after more than 12 years, I've never had a Watauga County beef hamburger. They only sell them in like one restaurant around town, and it's like super expensive. It's not for local impoverished Appalachians. Like, that's not who benefits from these farms. But who does benefit are the millionaire family who's basically throwing a festival every year, making $10 million of untaxed revenue, and then they're not paying their taxes because they maintain a agricultural exemption for their fake farm. And I've worked on these fake farms. I worked on a farm where the owner of the land would go to the Carolina Country Club, and that's $100,000 a year, by the way, to be part of the Carolina Country Club, and he would go to work. You know what his job was? Playing golf. Golf, a fake sport that requires 100 times as much land as real sports like soccer, football, baseball, etc. Golf, they clear 100 times more land, so hundreds, 200, 300, 500 acres of land for a golf course. And this farm is not too different. This all used to be forest. And what's really sad is these forests used to protect us from storms. A hurricane cannot form over a forest. There's too much friction in the air molecules and the leaves and the branches of the trees. There's too much structure in a forest. It pulls all that moisture out of the air. It slows down the winds. It slows down the floodwaters, soaks up the floodwaters. The roots retain the structure of the ground and prevent erosion, the roots of the trees. And on top of this, if you don't have erosion, you don't have pollution in your waterways, you don't have silty, dirty water that kills animals by reducing the amount of oxygen, reducing the cleanliness of the water, clogging their gills. And I'm talking about everything from crayfish to real fish, that we like to catch. Fishermen like to catch fish in clean, crisp Appalachian streams, and farms are the #1 source of pollution in our streams, like by a long shot. Farm herbicides and fertilizers have been shown to mutate wildlife, causing frogs to grow extra limbs or even change their sex as they develop, making them intersex sometimes, and this makes it so that they can't reproduce as well. Almost kind of reminds you about the human population, who is currently facing a fertility crisis, as it's been called, but I won't get into too much of that today. I'd just like to focus on the hurricane. I mean, all these trees came down, yeah. These are baby trees. Not one of these trees that fell down on this road was more than 50 years old. These trees should be growing to the potential of 500 years old. Now, not every tree is going to grow to 500, but 20% of them are going to grow to 100 years old. 20% of them are going to grow to 200 years old. A few of them are going to grow to 3. More are going to grow to 400 years old. And then a few of them, probably the smallest percent, but definitely a substantial amount, are going to grow to 500 plus years old. Some trees, like hemlocks, have been dated to, I think, closer to 1,000 years old. So, some trees don't get that old. They only get to be 50. But I think locust trees don't live that long. And locusts make good firewood, it's almost like there's a purpose for these things, that, we get some successional trees that grow 50 years, and then afterwards, the forest replaces them with the giants that grow forever. On a ridge, you might have more frequency of fires and wind, more exposure to storms and ice on a ridge and high elevations. Those places, the trees might not grow as much. They might be stunted, or they just get damaged before they can fully grow to those old growth, mature, virgin forest levels. But in our cove forest, we should have these giants that never face a challenge, because the cove, the structure of the land, protects them. It'd be sweet. It'd be sweet if we had that still. And I also fantasize about the days when there was a hundreds of miles wide forest of longleaf pine trees. Longleaf pine were the dominant tree, literally 99% of trees probably, between coastal areas of Virginia all the way to Texas for the most part. In the Florida to Georgia region, maybe 200-300 plus miles wide. And these longleaf pine trees grow taller than the pine plantation trees, the yellow pines and loblollies that we replanted after we cut down these forests. They grew 100 to 150 feet tall. Wikipedia even says 154 feet. I haven't read the primary source, but hundreds of feet, or stories above anything in the landscape, any geologic structure. out in the flatlands of the coastal plain in the southeast, the Gulf Coast. It's so flat, such a flat landscape. If you had these tall trees scraping away at the hurricanes, they wouldn't be able to get hundreds of miles inland. And again, if we had our huge trees in our cove forest, 150 plus feet tall, still remaining, you know, and they were draining water and helping our landscape and our rivers. You know, North Carolina was a land of rivers before we dammed them all up. And then what happens when you dam a river? You make a lake, and then you get things like lake effect snow. They see that every year around the Great Lakes, but lake effect snow is simply the weather system getting supercharged by a big body of water. And that can happen with hurricanes too, right? Hurricanes don't come from the land, they come from the ocean. So if you give them more water instead of things like trees to slow them down, there's just nothing you can do. You're giving them more water, you're just feeding the fire, you're feeding the storm. There's you know, nothing to prevent these storms from getting wrung out when they finally hit some structure, when they finally hit our Appalachian mountains. There's nothing to slow them down or keep them tampered. Every tree counts. Like, that's how you have to think of things. Humans have a dominating effect on the landscape. If you don't believe that, go pull up Google Maps and zoom in on wherever the hell you live. And it probably used to be a forest. It, you know, like I said, like even the amount of snow on the trees, the reflection of the light, the amount of water that the bark of a dry tree that can absorb, it's different than a flat piece of grass or pavement or the roof of a house. And yeah, we all have to live somewhere, but you can live amongst the forest. And we've got development of our mountaintops. We've got golf courses out the wazoo, fake farms, and a lack of forest that would have protected us, you know, riparian zones that prevent erosion. For years, we've had huge issues across North Carolina with water running over the roads on these mountain roads instead of under them. Where there's places where there should be bridges where they just put a culvert or nothing at all. And these places are wetlands where wildlife used to live, and unique plants and animals and fungi. You know, if you just give a couple feet of bridge space, like 2 feet, it would actually act as a refuge for a lot of animals and plants and things that need that kind of like moist shaded area, like underneath a log, kind of simulating that landscape, underneath cover. You know, we humans take a nice diverse forest with rocks and logs and trees, and we just make it into a flat piece of grass, and that's like a slip and slide for storms. So anyways, just wanted to kind of review what I'm seeing as a landscaper, a farm manager, and a teacher in Appalachia, and give you all my perspective of this whole storm, how it was largely preventable, and I want the, you know, general public to have a better understanding of, you know, what really happened. So, made this video. Cool to see snow again. Have a good day.